Family reunions were supposed to be loud, messy, and comforting. Plates clinking, children running barefoot on grass, old stories retold for the 100th time. For Lala, this reunion felt different the moment she stepped onto her grandmother's farm. The land breathed memories. The red barn leaned exactly the way it had when she was a child. The apple trees still stood like quiet guardians. And the farmhouse porch, where her grandmother once sat every evening, creaked softly in the wind. Lala didn't know that before sunset, everything she loved about this place would be put up for sale for $1.6 million and announced like a joke. The reunion was in full swing when Uncle Raymond cleared his throat. He stood near the old oak table, holding a glass of lemonade like it was a microphone. Conversation slowed. Someone laughed, thinking he was about to tell one of his usual loud stories. Instead, he smiled and said, "I'm selling your grandmother's farm today. $1.6 million. Papers are ready." Silence. Not the awkward kind. The wrong kind. Lala felt it before she understood it. A cold pressure behind her ribs. The words didn't land all at once. They sliced in layers. Selling today? Her grandmother's chair sat empty beside the porch. It still had the faded cushion Grandma refused to throw away. Lala stared at it as if it might speak up. Someone chuckled nervously. Another cousin said, "You're joking, right?" Uncle Raymond shook his head. "No joke. Best offer I've ever gotten. Developers. Cash." Lala's mother dropped her fork. Her aunt whispered, "You can't do that without." Raymond cut her off. "I can. I own the deed." That was when Lala stood up. "Since when?" she asked, her voice steady in a way she didn't feel. Raymond looked at her like she was a child asking about adult business. "Since your grandmother signed it over to me. Years ago." The lie, or half-truth, hung heavy. Lala remembered those years. Her grandmother's hands shaking. Doctor visits. Legal papers no one explained. "You promised," Lala said quietly. "You promised her this land would stay in the family." Raymond shrugged. "Promises don't pay taxes." The words hit harder than the announcement itself. Lala looked around. Everyone seemed frozen, angry, confused, powerless. The farm wasn't just land. It was birthdays, funerals, summers, forgiveness. And now it was a number. $1.6 million. She felt something inside her shift. Not break, but harden. "Not today," Lala said. Raymond laughed. "You don't get a vote." She met his eyes. "Then I'll find one." As the sun dipped lower over the fields, Lala realized this reunion wasn't about family anymore. It was about a fight. And she wasn't backing down. Lala didn't sleep that night. The ceiling fan above her creaked softly, just like it had since childhood. Outside, crickets filled the darkness, unaware that the land beneath them was on the verge of disappearing. But Lala was wide awake. Uncle Raymond's words echoed in her mind again and again. "I own the deed." It didn't sit right. It didn't feel right. Before sunrise, Lala slipped out onto the porch. Morning mist hovered over the fields, pale and quiet. Her grandmother used to say the farm breathed at dawn, like it was alive. "Tell me the truth," Lala whispered. She went into the old study, the room everyone avoided. It still smelled faintly of lavender and old paper. Dust floated in the light like memories refusing to leave. At the bottom of the desk drawer, exactly where her grandmother once hid handwritten notes and spare keys, Lala found a small wooden box. It wasn't locked. Inside were letters, medical reports, and a thin folder labeled in faded ink. "Property, do not rely on verbal promises." Her heart began to race. She pulled out a document, a power of attorney, dated 3 years earlier. The signature at the bottom was her grandmother's, but it looked wrong. Weak. Uneven. Lala remembered that year clearly. Hospital visits. Confusion. Moments when her grandmother didn't recognize people she loved. Another paper followed, a draft of a will. Unfinished. The farm was meant to be protected. Divided fairly. Unsellable without family consent. This was never finalized, Lala whispered. A soft sound came from behind her. Her mother stood in the doorway, eyes tired and red. "You found it," she said quietly. "You knew something was wrong," Lala said. Her mother nodded. "I suspected. But Raymond handled everything, the lawyers, the documents. We trusted him." Lala closed the folder slowly. Trust isn't the same as legality. By mid-morning, sleek black SUVs rolled onto the property. The developers stepped out in polished shoes, smiling like they already owned the place. Raymond greeted them confidently. "This is just a formality," he said. "Family matter." Lala stepped forward, the folder held firmly in her hands. "No," she said calmly. "It's not." Raymond's smile stiffened. "You don't understand legal details." "Then explain this," Lala replied, lifting the papers. "Why was the will never filed? Why did Grandma's doctor note cognitive impairment the same week she signed this power of attorney?" The developers exchanged uneasy glances. Raymond's voice dropped. "You're embarrassing yourself." Lala met his eyes without flinching. "You embarrass the truth first." For the first time, Raymond looked uncertain. And Lala realized something important. This sale wasn't as secure as he claimed. The land still had a voice, and she was ready to fight for it. The developers didn't leave right away. They stood near their SUVs, pretending to take calls, pretending not to listen, while every word between Lala and Uncle Raymond hung in the air like smoke that refused to clear. Raymond finally broke the silence. "This meeting is postponed," he said sharply. "Family discussion." One of the developers adjusted his tie. "We'll need clarification from legal counsel before proceeding." That sentence alone felt like a crack in a wall that Raymond had built very carefully. They drove away slowly. Too slowly. When the engines faded, Raymond turned toward Lala. The charm was gone now. What remained was irritation, raw and exposed. "You had no right," he said. Lala didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "I had every right. This was Grandma's home." Raymond stepped closer. "You think a few dusty papers mean something? I've already spoken to lawyers." "So have I," Lala replied. That part was a bluff, for now, but Raymond didn't know that. Her mother placed a hand on Lala's arm, silently warning her. This wasn't just about property anymore. This was about what families hide under polite smiles. Raymond scoffed. "You don't even live here anymore." Lala looked around the farm. The fence her grandmother painted every summer, the fig tree they planted together, the soil that still smelled like rain and labor. "I never left," she said. "I just carried it with me." That afternoon, Lala drove into town. The law office was old. Brick walls. Frosted glass. A brass plate on the door read, "Evelyn Carter, ESQ. Estate and Property Law." Lala hesitated before going in. She didn't know what she expected: judgment, impatience, indifference. Instead, the receptionist looked up and smiled gently. "You must be Lala." Lala froze. "Yes, how did you know?" The woman nodded toward the back office. "She's been expecting you. For years." That sentence made Lala's stomach tighten. Inside, Evelyn Carter was in her late 60s, silver hair pulled back neatly, eyes sharp but kind. She stood up slowly when Lala entered. "You look just like your grandmother," she said. Lala swallowed. "You knew her?" "Knew her?" Evelyn smiled sadly. "I represented her. For over 20 years. They sat. Lala placed the folder on the desk with careful hands. "I think something was taken from us," she said. "And I don't know where to start." Evelyn didn't open the folder immediately. Instead, she leaned back and folded her hands. "Your grandmother came to me 3 times in the last year of her life," she said. The third time, she was afraid. Lala's chest tightened. "Afraid of what?" "Of being rushed," Evelyn replied. "Of being pressured into signing things she didn't understand." Evelyn opened the folder now, scanning the documents slowly. "This power of attorney," she said, tapping the page, "was never meant to be permanent. It was conditional. Medical only. Not property." Lala looked up sharply. "But Raymond said..." "Raymond said what benefited Raymond," Evelyn interrupted gently. She pulled out another file from her drawer. "This," she said, sliding it forward, is what your grandmother asked me to keep safe. Lala's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a legal clause, typed, signed, and notarized. It stated clearly, in the event of any attempt to sell the farm without unanimous family consent, ownership reverts to the estate until a full judicial review is conducted. Lala stared at the words. She put this in place after your uncle began pushing for a sale, Evelyn continued. She didn't trust him. She trusted you. Me? Lala whispered. She mentioned you often, Evelyn said softly. Said you listened. Said you remembered. Lala felt tears burn her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. What does this mean? She asked. It means, Evelyn said carefully, that your uncle cannot legally sell that farm today. Or tomorrow. Or without a courtroom. Lala exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding her breath for years. But, Evelyn added, he will fight. And families rarely forgive when money is involved. Lala nodded. I'm not asking for forgiveness. That evening, when Lala returned to the farm, Raymond was waiting. He didn't yell. He smiled. I heard you visited a lawyer, he said casually. Lala met his gaze. Yes. One you should have mentioned. Raymond's jaw tightened for half a second. Just enough. You think you've won, he said. This land is expensive to keep. Taxes. Maintenance. Sentiment won't save it. Lala held up a copy of the clause. No, she said. Truth will. For the first time, Raymond said nothing. The farmhouse creaked as night settled in. The land felt quieter, like it was listening. Lala stood on the porch, looking out over the fields. This wasn't just a fight over money anymore. It was a reckoning. And it had only just begun. The next morning arrived too quietly. No birds. No breeze. Just the heavy stillness that settles before something breaks. Lala was in the kitchen when she heard it, the sound of tires on gravel. Not one car. Two. She looked out the window. Raymond hadn't come alone. A man in a dark suit stepped out first, carrying a leather briefcase. Behind him followed Lala's cousin, Mark, eyes fixed on his phone like he didn't want to see the house at all. Lawyer, her mother whispered from behind her. Lala nodded. Of course. They gathered in the living room, the same room where birthdays were celebrated, where her grandmother once danced barefoot to old records. Now it felt like a courtroom without a judge. Raymond didn't sit. He paced. My attorney believes there's been a misunderstanding, he began smoothly. This clause you're waving around. It's legally binding, Lala interrupted calmly. And you know it. The lawyer finally spoke. Miss Lala, clauses can be challenged. Intent can be questioned. Lala turned toward him. Then question the intent of a woman who spent 50 years on this land. Mark finally looked up. Why are you doing this? He snapped. Do you know how much money this is? Lala studied him. This boy she once taught how to ride a bike. I know exactly how much it costs, she said. Just not in dollars. Raymond slammed his hand on the table. You think this is noble? You think Grandma would want us drowning in debt to keep dirt and memories? Lala's mother stepped forward for the first time. She wanted fairness, she said quietly. Something you never offered. The lawyer cleared his throat. Regardless, this property has outstanding taxes. Maintenance costs. The estate cannot sustain this indefinitely. Lala nodded slowly. I agree. Raymond smiled just a little. There it is. But, Lala continued, selling it to developers isn't the only solution. She reached into her bag and placed a folder on the table. Inside were plans, numbers, proposals. A land trust, she said. Partial leasing. Agricultural grants. The farm can sustain itself. Raymond laughed. You think paperwork beats cash in hand? No, Lala replied. I think legacy beats greed. Silence fell. Then Mark spoke again, softer now. You always were Grandma's favorite. That one hurt more than the shouting. Lala met his eyes. She didn't play favorites, she said. She paid attention. The lawyer closed his briefcase slowly. This will go to court, he said. Soon. Raymond turned toward the door. This isn't over. As they left, Lala felt something shift, Not relief, not victory, but clarity. This fight would cost her sleep,
family,
comfort. But as she stepped onto the porch afterward, the land stretched out before her, unchanged and patient. Her grandmother used to say, "If something is worth protecting, it will ask something from you." Lala finally understood what that price was, and she was ready to pay it. The court papers arrived on a Tuesday. Plain envelope. No warning. No drama. Just reality folded into official language. Lala held the documents in her hands, reading the words slowly, carefully, like reading a diagnosis. Raymond was formally contesting the clause, claiming undue influence, claiming confusion, claiming family necessity. The hearing was scheduled in 3 weeks. 3 weeks to defend a lifetime. That night, Lala couldn't sleep. She walked the farm the way her grandmother used to, barefoot on the porch, slow steps through the fields, letting the ground remind her where she came from. That was when she noticed it. The old shed. It had always been locked. Not with a padlock, just a stubborn, rusted latch no one ever bothered with. Her grandmother used to say, "Some doors don't open until you're ready." Lala tried the latch. It gave way. Inside, dust floated in thin beams of moonlight. Tools hung neatly. Shelves labeled in her grandmother's careful handwriting. And in the far corner, a small wooden trunk. Lala knelt and opened it. Inside were letters.
Dozens of them.
All addressed but never sent. Most were to Raymond. Some to other family members. One, at the bottom, had Lala's name on it. Her hands shook as she opened it. "My dear Lala, if you are reading this, then the farm is being challenged. And that means I was right to worry. Your uncle is not a bad man, but he listens too closely to money and not enough to people. I did not tell you everything, because I didn't want to burden you. But I trusted you to stand when the time came. The land is protected, yes, but only if someone has the courage to protect it. If they call you difficult, let them. If they call you sentimental, let them. The truth does not need permission. Love always."
Grandma.
Lala pressed the letter to her chest and cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, but the kind of crying that empties something heavy from inside you. The next day, she went back to Evelyn Carter. When Lala placed the letters on the desk, Evelyn went very still.
"She wrote all this," Lala said.
"And never sent them." Evelyn read silently for a long time. "These change everything," she said finally. "They establish intent. Clear, repeated intent." "Is it enough?" Lala asked. Evelyn looked up at her. "It makes your uncle's case very uncomfortable." Word spread quickly. Family members who had been quiet began calling. Some cautiously supportive. Some angry. Some suddenly very interested in compromise. Raymond, meanwhile, went silent.
Too silent.
Until one evening, Lala found Mark waiting by the fence. He looked exhausted. "He's desperate," Mark said without preamble. "He took out loans. Against the sale." Lala's stomach dropped. "He what?" "He needs this to go through," Mark continued. "Or he loses more than the farm." Lala closed her eyes for a moment. This was the part no one talks about, the moment when justice collides with consequences. "I don't want to destroy him," she said quietly. Mark nodded. "But he'll destroy himself if he has to." That night, Lala sat at the kitchen table, the letters spread out before her. She wasn't just defending land anymore. She was deciding how far the story would go, and who would be left standing when it ended. Outside, the wind moved through the fields like a warning. Or maybe a promise. The courthouse smelled like old paper and colder decisions. Lala sat on the wooden bench, hands folded, spine straight. She had dressed simply, no power suit, no performance.
Just calm.
Just truth. Across the aisle, Raymond sat stiffly beside his lawyer, jaw clenched, eyes fixed forward like he was bracing for impact. Family filled the back rows. Some avoided Lala's gaze. Some watched her like she was a stranger. The judge entered. The room stood. And suddenly, this wasn't about memories anymore. It was about ownership. Raymond's lawyer spoke first, smooth, confident, practiced. He talked about financial strain, about family responsibility, about how sentiment should not outweigh practical reality. Then he said it. My client believes his mother was manipulated in her later years. A murmur rippled through the room. Lala felt it like a slap, but she didn't flinch. When it was their turn, Evelyn stood slowly. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't rush. Instead, she placed a stack of letters on the evidence table. These, she said, are the unsent letters of Margaret Hale, written over 15 years, consistent in tone, intent, and clarity. Raymond shifted in his seat. Evelyn continued, they demonstrate not confusion, but foresight. The judge adjusted his glasses. Call your witness. Evelyn turned, not to Lala, to Raymond Hale.
Gasps.
Raymond froze. What? You're listed as a primary recipient, Evelyn said calmly. And the content concerns you directly. His lawyer whispered urgently, but it was too late. Raymond took the stand. Evelyn approached slowly. Did your mother ever discuss selling the farm with you? Raymond swallowed. She mentioned options. Did she ever agree to sell it to developers?
No.
Did she ever say why? Raymond hesitated. Evelyn waited. Finally, he muttered. She said it would erase something. Evelyn nodded. And did she tell you she was afraid you'd do it anyway? Raymond's face flushed. Yes. Silence. Then Evelyn delivered the final blow. And when you took out loans against the expected sale, did you inform the family? Raymond's head snapped up. That's irrelevant. The judge leaned forward. Answer the question. Raymond's voice cracked.
No.
A sound came from the gallery, someone gasping. Someone crying. Lala closed her eyes for half a second. This wasn't victory. This was exposure. The judge called a recess. In the hallway, Raymond confronted Lala. You planned this, he hissed. She shook her head.
No.
You did. His shoulders sagged. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he said, suddenly smaller. I just wanted out. Lala looked at him, the uncle who once carried her on his shoulders through these same fields. There were other ways, she said gently. Raymond laughed bitterly. There always are. We just don't choose them. When court resumed, the judge delivered a temporary injunction. No sale. No transfer. No development. The farm would remain protected, pending final judgment. As people filed out, Lala stayed seated for a moment longer. Her hands were steady, but inside, something fragile had survived the storm. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds. Not dramatically, just enough. The farm felt different after court. Not quieter, just heavier. As if the land itself was holding its breath. Lala returned that evening alone. She parked by the old oak tree and walked the rest of the way, letting her boots press into the soil that had shaped 3 generations of her family. The house lights were off. The porch creaked under her steps, familiar in a way that hurt. Inside, everything was exactly where Grandma had left it. The clock on the wall still ticked, stubborn and steady. The curtains smelled faintly of lavender. On the kitchen table sat the same bowl of apples Grandma used to refill every morning, even when no one was visiting. Lala set her bag down and exhaled. The injunction should have felt like relief. But it didn't. Because the war wasn't over. It had just changed shape. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. We need to talk. Privately. No lawyers. Raymond. Lala stared at the screen for a long moment before locking the phone and setting it face down on the table. No, she whispered to the empty room. But the past had a way of not accepting no. The family begins to split. By the next morning, the family group chat, silent for months, came alive. Cousins arguing. Aunts demanding explanations. Someone accusing Lala of dragging everyone into public humiliation. One message stung more than the others. This was supposed to stay in the family. Lala typed. Deleted. Typed again. I tried. He didn't. She left it at that. By afternoon, 2 relatives showed up unannounced. Aunt Marlene first, tight smile, arms crossed, eyes sharp. I'm proud of you, she said quietly once inside. But you've made enemies. I didn't choose sides, Lala replied. I chose the truth. Marlene nodded. That's why it hurts. Later came Cousin Denise, nervous, conflicted. Raymond's panicking, she admitted. The loans, they're bad, Lala. Really bad. Lala felt the familiar twist in her chest. What do they want from me? She asked. Denise hesitated. They want you to negotiate. Raymond's offer. The meeting happened 2 days later. Neutral ground. A diner just off the highway. Raymond looked older. Not physically, something deeper. Like the version of himself he believed in had cracked. I won't fight you anymore, he said before Lala even sat down. She raised an eyebrow. That's new. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents. Numbers. Terms. I'll drop the lawsuit, Raymond said. Publicly. Admit I was wrong. Lala didn't touch the papers. And you agree to sell part of the land, he continued. The north section. It doesn't have the house. Doesn't touch the old orchard. Her stomach tightened. Developers. They'll build luxury cabins, Raymond added quickly. Eco-friendly. Discreet. It won't ruin the whole thing. Lala laughed once, short, sharp. You're still trying to erase it, she said. I'm trying to survive, Raymond snapped. Then softened.
Please.
I'm in too deep. Silence stretched between them. What about Grandma? Lala asked finally. Raymond looked away. She knew this would happen, he said. That's why she tied it up in clauses. She didn't trust me. No, Lala said gently. She trusted me. Raymond closed his eyes. If you say no, he warned, I lose everything. Lala stood. Then you should have listened when she was alive. She walked out before he could answer. Doubt creeps in. That night, Lala couldn't sleep. Not because she was unsure about the farm, but because she was sure about the consequences. She stood at the bedroom window, watching moonlight spill across the fields. What did protecting the past cost the present? Was preserving legacy worth destroying a living person, even one who caused the damage himself? She pulled Grandma's letter from the drawer and reread it. The truth does not need permission. But truth still left scars. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Evelyn. They may approach the court with a settlement, she said. If you agree, this ends quietly. And if I don't? Evelyn paused. Then it gets ugly. For everyone. After the call, Lala sat on the floor and let the weight of it all settle. She wasn't just a granddaughter anymore. She was a gatekeeper. The unexpected ally. The knock came just after sunrise. Mark stood on the porch, holding 2 coffees. I heard about the offer, he said. Lala sighed. Of course you did. They're pressuring the county, Mark continued. Trying to rezone the north section. That land isn't empty, Lala said. It's wetlands. Mark smiled slightly. And protected habitats. Lala blinked. You're saying, if they push development, Mark said, they expose themselves to federal review. Hope flickered. But it'll mean more attention, he warned.
Media. Scrutiny.
Lala looked out at the fields again. Then let them look. Choosing the hard path. That afternoon, Lala wrote a statement. Not for court. For the family. For the town. For anyone who believed land was just something you could price. She posted it publicly. She explained the clauses. Her grandmother's intent. The history of the farm. And why she would not sell not 1 inch. The response was immediate.
Support poured in.
Strangers shared memories. Local historians reached out. Environmental groups offered backing. And Raymond? He called once. She didn't answer. The calm before the final storm. As dusk settled, Lala walked the perimeter of the farm one last time that day. Fireflies blinked near the fence line. The air smelled like cut grass and rain. She knew what came next wouldn't be gentle.
Court. Media.
Family fallout. But she also knew this. Some things aren't inherited. They're defended. Lala stopped by the oak tree and placed her hand against its bark. I'm still here, she whispered. The land answered in silence. And that was enough. The farmhouse felt unusually quiet that morning. Lala walked slowly through the rooms, each creak of the floorboard reminding her of years gone by. Outside, Reporters had gathered near the driveway, cameras hidden in the trees. Social media was alive with her story. Granddaughter fights uncle for family farm. Lala felt pride, but also tension. She knew attention would complicate things, but the truth needed witnesses. While preparing breakfast, she noticed a yellowed envelope tucked behind a loose brick in the fireplace. On it, her grandmother's handwriting read, "For Lala, only if the family disputes arise. Trust no one blindly." Inside were neatly folded papers, an unpublished amendment to the property trust, a hidden clause even Raymond hadn't known. If any heir attempts to sell or mortgage the land without unanimous consent, the farm remains under estate control until judicial review. Any unauthorized attempt renders the action null and void. Lala's heart raced. This was the missing piece. Raymond's threats, loans, developers, everything hinged on loopholes he assumed existed. Confrontation with Raymond. Later that afternoon, Raymond arrived. He looked calmer than expected, but uneasy. "I heard you found something," he said cautiously. Lala placed the document on the table. "This is Grandma's final word," she said. "Even you can't touch it." Raymond scanned the papers, his hands trembling. I didn't know," he muttered. "You didn't look," Lala replied. "You assumed power. You assumed greed." For a moment, the room was silent. Raymond set the papers down, visibly shaken. "So, you win?" he asked. Lala shook her head. "Not winning. Preserving." Media attention. By evening, reporters and neighbors had gathered outside, cameras flashing. Lala stepped onto the porch, letters in one hand, the amendment in the other. "This is my family's heritage," she said to the press. "This farm is our history, our memories, and our responsibility. I will protect it legally and morally. No one can sell it without unanimous consent." Questions came rapidly. "Are you worried about your uncle's reaction? Will you sell part of the farm? Did you expect this?" Lala answered with calm authority. She wasn't angry. She was resolute. An unexpected ally. After the press left, Mark approached. "Developers are trying to challenge your findings," he said. "Then we challenge them first," Lala replied. She walked through the orchard, touching the apple trees, listening to the rustling leaves. Her grandmother's voice echoed. "Lala, courage isn't loud. Courage is quietly keeping what matters safe, even when everyone doubts you." Night fell over the farm. Fireflies blinked in clusters. Stars shone bright. Lala held the amendment tightly. The farm was safe for now, but she knew the final test was yet to come. It wouldn't just be legal. It would be personal. The courthouse smelled like old paper and cold decisions. Lala sat on the wooden bench, hands folded, spine straight. Raymond was across the aisle, stiff and tense, jaw clenched, eyes fixed forward. Family members filled the gallery, some supportive, some silent, some curious. The judge entered. The room stood, then sat, and suddenly it wasn't just memories anymore. It was about ownership, law, and legacy. Raymond's lawyer spoke first, smooth, confident, practiced. He emphasized financial strain, family responsibility, and how sentiment should not outweigh practicality. Then he accused Lala of manipulating her uncle. The gallery murmured. Lala's chest tightened, but she remained calm. When it was their turn, Evelyn Carter, Lala's lawyer, stood slowly. She placed the stack of letters and the secret amendment on the evidence table. "These," she said quietly, "are the unsent letters of Margaret Hale and the unpublished amendment to the estate trust. They clearly demonstrate intent, awareness, and protection of the land." Raymond's eyes flickered. His lawyer whispered urgently, but Evelyn didn't flinch. Raymond was called to the stand. Evelyn questioned him methodically. "Did your mother ever discuss selling the farm with you?" she asked. Raymond hesitated. "She'd mentioned options." "Did she ever agree to sell it to developers?"
No.
"And when you took loans against the sale?" Evelyn asked calmly. Raymond's voice cracked. No one told me it wasn't legal." The judge leaned forward. "Answer clearly." Raymond swallowed. "I knew, but I tried anyway." The room fell silent. Even his allies seemed shocked. Lala felt a mix of emotions, pain, satisfaction, but not triumph. This wasn't about winning. It was about the truth being seen and honored. The judge called a recess. In the hallway, Raymond confronted Lala. "You planned all this," he said, voice low.
"I didn't," Lala replied.
"You did." Raymond's shoulders slumped. "I didn't mean to go this far. I just wanted out." "There were other ways," she said. "You could have honored her wishes." Raymond laughed bitterly. "We never choose the easy way, do we?" Temporary victory.
Court resumed.
The judge issued a temporary injunction. No sale, no transfer, no development. The farm remained under family protection until final judgment. As people filed out, Lala stayed seated. Her hands were steady. The weight of responsibility pressed on her, but clarity had come. Outside, sunlight broke through clouds, illuminating the fields. Lala stepped onto the porch and breathed in deeply. The air smelled like rain and earth, like life and memories intertwined.
This wasn't the end.
Raymond could still fight. Developers could still push. Family tensions could still flare. But for now, the farm was safe. The land seemed to exhale with her, as if acknowledging her resolve. Her grandmother's words returned to her mind. "If something is worth protecting, it will ask something from you." Lala knew she had answered the call. And now, she was ready for whatever came next. The final court date arrived faster than Lala expected. The farm, quiet and patient, seemed to anticipate the moment. Sunlight reflected off the farmhouse windows, golden and warm, as if blessing the decision about to be made. Inside the courtroom, tension was palpable. Raymond sat beside his lawyer, tense and rigid. Lala's mother and a few cousins watched quietly from the gallery. Lala herself was calm, holding her grandmother's letters and the secret amendment tightly in her hands. The judge reviewed the evidence: letters, notarized amendments, medical records, all clearly proving Margaret Hale's intent. Lala's lawyer, Evelyn Carter, presented the arguments meticulously. Raymond's lawyer tried every angle: claims of undue influence, alleged coercion, financial strain, but every objection fell flat against the undeniable truth. Margaret had planned for Lala to protect the farm. The verdict. When the judge spoke, the courtroom held its collective breath. After reviewing all evidence, the judge said slowly, "It is clear that the property trust and related amendments were intended to preserve the family farm under the care of Margaret Hale's heirs. Any attempt to sell or mortgage without unanimous consent is invalid." Raymond's shoulders slumped. Lala exhaled. Relief washed over her. Not triumphant, but quiet, deep, and grounding. The injunction became permanent. The farm was safe. Her grandmother's legacy preserved. Family aftermath. After court, the family gathered on the farm porch. The tension between them hadn't vanished, but there was a new respect. Raymond avoided speaking much, though Lala noticed a flicker of acknowledgement in his eyes, a silent admission that she had honored their grandmother's wishes. Mark came to stand beside her, smiling faintly. "You did it," he said. Lala nodded. "We did it. Grandma planned this for all of us." Her mother hugged her tightly. "She would be proud," she whispered. The farm's new beginning. Over the following weeks, Lala worked with the local council to ensure the farm could sustain itself. Community members volunteered for restoration projects. Environmental groups helped protect the wetlands. A small cooperative was formed for harvesting crops, preserving both the land and the family legacy. The farm began to thrive, not as a business, not as a commodity, but as a living monument to the generations that came before. Reflection and growth. One evening, Lala stood beneath the old oak tree, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky was painted in hues of orange and purple. The wind carried the scent of apples and freshly turned soil. She held her grandmother's letters once more, reading the final words aloud softly. "The truth does not need permission." Lala smiled. She understood now. Protecting what you love is not about conflict or victory. It's about courage, patience, and the willingness to stand alone when necessary. She thought of Raymond, her uncle, flawed, human, and realized forgiveness might come eventually. But for now, the farm, the legacy, and the truth had been saved. Legacy secured. The farmhouse lights glowed softly. Fireflies blinked in the orchard. The fields, vibrant and alive, seemed to whisper thanks. Lala walked slowly through the orchard, touching the trees and feeling the weight of history beneath her fingers. She had inherited more than land. She had inherited responsibility, courage, integrity. The spirit of her grandmother lived not only in these fields but in her decisions, her resolve, and her heart. That night, as stars blanketed the sky, Lala finally felt a deep, unshakable peace. The farm was safe. The family, though fractured in places, had a future. And she knew, whatever storms came, she had the strength to weather them. The legacy of Margaret Hale had been preserved, not through wealth or power, but through love, wisdom, and the unwavering courage of her granddaughter. And Lala was ready for every sunrise the farm would ever see. Lala stood on the farmhouse porch, the morning sun spilling over the fields. In her hands were her grandmother's letters and the secret amendment, a legacy preserved. The farm, alive with orchard trees and dew-kissed grass, had survived the storm of family conflict and greed. She walked through the orchard, feeling the weight of responsibility and the strength of her grandmother's trust. Outside, birds sang, wind whispered through the trees, and the land seemed to breathe with relief. Lala smiled. The farm was safe. The family, though tested, had learned the value of truth and courage. And she knew, whatever challenges came, she had the strength to protect this legacy for every sunrise, every season, always. The farmhouse lights glowed softly. Lala turned to the fields, feeling peace, pride, and quiet triumph.